Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc. So, people have been asking for this video to go alongside my other video, my top list for 5-star dragons, okay? I've already covered PvP, so now we're going to go into PvE content. And what that means is, for those that aren't familiar, this is content where you're not playing against other players' teams. So pretty much every aspect of this game except for Coliseum and the Clan Wars, this covers everything else, okay? So this is pretty all-encompassing, but a lot of it is going to focus on Clan Dungeon because that's the other big competitive aspect of this game. But let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so just kicking off this, most of this isn't in any sort of real order here, but this is, a lot of it does focus around Clan Dungeon, like I was saying. A lot of these dragons that are good in Clan Dungeon can be good elsewhere in the game. So starting things off with one of our main DPSs for PvE, this is going to be really encompassing 3 different dragons all on one because they literally all do the same thing, and that's going to be Darkbane, Mini, and Poseidon. All 3 of these dragons are your go-to for targeting 7 enemies. Okay, so if you're trying to attack 7 enemies at once, they are your go-to because they get crazy good damage multipliers when you target 7 enemies. So if you're doing Clan Dungeon, the bottom lane with all the snake dragon heads, that's 7 enemies. It's the 7 deadly sins, right? So you're gonna get the biggest bang for your buck if you're running those dragons in that bottom lane. Other places though in the game that these dragons are work towards is they are great in clearing Ancient Tower, because Ancient Tower has like 2 rows of adds and then a boss fight after that. They work really well there early on. Eventually you'll work into other teams that's even faster at clearing those. But I also use them in Tower of Tests. So in Tower of Tests, you have to build a team of all of one element for each different tower, right? You have an all-fire team, an all-earth team, and so on. I like to include one of these guys on each of my lists. So every team will have at least one of these 7 targeting DPS dragons, right? So just to click on one of these guys here, looks like I said, they all kind of do pretty much the same thing. We'll use Darkbane as an example here. I would also point out that the different ones have different elements. So like light type, the only way to get a light type is to get Mini and Poseidon. And I believe dark type, the only way to get a dark type is Poseidon and Darkbane. So, you know, you see how it works there. You've got to get the different ones for the different elements because Darkbane is only 3 of, you know, and that same rule kind of applies to the others as well. But what we're doing here is looking at this, the drag skill primarily on all of the dragons. It's pretty much kind of the same thing here. Target count of 7 is your main focus here. They're 2 mana cost attackers, so they work really well with dragons that reduce the cost of, or they reduce the cooldowns on 2 mana cost attackers. They just lots of like really good team combinations you can build with 2 mana cost dragons, and these are perfect for that. 20-second cooldown, you can reduce that down to like, it's like 12 or 13 seconds, and so you can just repeatedly use this in dungeons. Really great ability here. And then you can just, this is kind of what, again, makes these dragons increase the final damage by 100% or ×2. It just depends on how they want to word it. It's the same thing, ×2 damage or increase it by 100% when you target at least 6 enemies for the drag skill here. They say at least 6, but it's mostly included as 7 because you have a target count of 7 here. But it's great because it also keeps it balanced. You can't use these in PvP, right? Because there's only 5 dragons when you go into PvP. So it keeps these dragons very, very balanced for that. But yeah, great stuff here. They also have passives that do more damage. So, you know, every, what is it? Yeah, every 10 seconds here, you're going to target count 6, and you're going to do a whole bunch of damage to stuff. Just pretty much that's kind of how they all operate here, is you're attacking a lot of enemies, and the more enemies you attack, the more damage you do. So that's the first one on our list, is going to be those 3. Moving on there, though, we're going to stay in the primary focus here of Clan Dungeon, and we're going to go jump over to Mello Dragon. So Mello Dragon is a perfect combination with those DPSs we just talked about. He is so perfect. All the elements. He comes in every single element, and every single element is fantastic. Okay, just first thing, leadership. Mello has probably the best leadership. He's the best choice for leadership. Because not only does his kit incredible, but his leadership is increased allies attack by 43% when fighting a boss. So we talked about in the other video, leaderships that is increased the allies attack by 35%. That's a nice blanket. It applies in every single game mode, that 35%. But Mello in particular, when fighting a boss, and when you're going to a clan dungeon, all those dragon heads at the bottom all count as a boss. It's 43%. So a bit better there. And then also its drag skill, it's another big AoE, so you got target count of 6 here on this one. He doesn't get more damage for more targets, unfortunately, but to counteract that, after using his drag skill, increase or decrease Earth allies' drag skill mana cost by 1 for 10 seconds. So all of your Earth dragons on your team, which you'll probably want to build an all-Earth team when you go against like the water dungeon, right? And you're fighting a lot of water stuff, you're going to want to have an all-earth team. And then he's going, when you use his drag skill, he reduces the mana cost of all those on the team by 1 for 10 seconds. So you just completely just keep redoing this skill over and over, and just keeping that as on as long as possible. But the fun doesn't stop there. Every set duration, inflict damage to enemy with 80% chance to silence target for 8 seconds. This isn't that big a deal. But every set duration, create a barrier equal to 8% of target's max HP on allies for 10 seconds. He's just a nice little buffer. And all these dragons are just great stuff here. They all apply to their element though. You cannot really cross these guys over. The leadership would apply, but the drag skill benefit here, it only applies to the same element. So you can't just get one and use it on all your teams. You have to get every single element to really make these guys shine. But they are phenomenal either way. Just being able to reduce the mana cost is just absolutely outstanding. And you can build him decently attacky, because he gets the nice little 6 target account attacks, so that's really great. But moving on from there, we're going to go into we spent a little time on the bottom lane. He's great. Those two are great for bottom lane clan dungeon, but going to the top lane, we need single target attackers, right? Single target attackers is what's really key in doing a lot of damage to that one, because he's a single boss up top. So if you have an AoE, you're not going to be doing as much damage as you could be on the bottom with an AoE attacker. So going at the top here for 5 stars, we've got the Tilkies here. All of them, except for Pour Fire, no fire type. But the drag skill here is inflict damage on enemies. Damage is increased by 2.5 times on bosses. So damage multipliers in this game are very important. A lot of dragons that you see only get a 1.2 times, or sometimes you'll see a 1.8 times, but those are really rare, and they usually have some sort of stipulation, whereas the stipulation on this is they're phenomenal, but you can only use them on bosses. You can't use these in PvP either, because the damage multiplier doesn't apply at all. So these guys are great for top laning. They do so much damage to the boss. Fully powered Tilki can really throw out some crazy numbers. I mean, I'm talking 4 million per hit. Yeah, crazy. As long as you're in the weakened state, yeah, you can throw out massive numbers with these guys. Again, though, you really want the one for the element that you're attacking, right? So you want the earth one if you're going against the water one, because you're going to increase that final damage by another 30%. That's just massive increase there. 30% increase on top of already the 2.5. Yeah, that's a lot. Just nice little attack buff there. Essentially just crit rate that allows you to focus more on DPS runes instead of crit rate runes. And it attacks an enemy. Attacker receives a 60% bonus from attack. This isn't that big a deal. It's just a nice little extra, I guess, little bit of DPS. They needed something probably to fill the slot here, and it just, again, target count of 1. You put him on top lane, you only have 1 target the whole fight. So great for just raw damage. The Tilkies are great for just pure damage against a single target boss. In other content, though, you can use them if you know what the dragon is that you're going to be fighting. If you're in Tower of Tests or Ancient Tower, you know what the final boss is going to be. And what you can do is you can cycle your Tilkeys out to go against that boss. So when you get to that boss, you just use the Tilkey to kill it instantly. And great for those as well. You just got to make sure you can't just keep using the same one over and over. You get to cycle them out. A little less useful in Tower of Tests, but decently useful in Ancient Tower, though, for sure. All right, our next dragon is a nice support type here. Just blanket support, useful really everywhere. I use this I use him as my leadership dragon for both top and bottom lane clan dungeon for the most part. I don't have all the Mellos yet. I'm still collecting them. So on the ones that I can't use my Mello for bottom lane, I'll use a Yurian instead, because Yurian has this nice all allies gain 35% attack. I talked about it just a little bit ago. Great, a little less powerful than the Mello dragon, but still really good. Okay, better than most other dragons. But in addition to that, we really like the support stuff here because every set duration decreased cooldown of allies' drag skill whose mana cost is 2 by 15% for 20 seconds. So Yurian combined with Mello, one of them reduces, instead of 2 mana cost, you're only doing a 1 mana cost to use your drag skills. And then Yurian here is reducing the cooldown timer, so now you can use those skills more rapidly, right? It's just a great combination here. All the elements are good. I only have the water and earth, and I use them every single week in Clan Dungeon. I have one on top lane and one on bottom lane. They're great dragons for sure. Even if I'm not using the leadership, just having them on team for the passives alone is worth having. The second passive, every set duration remove 1 status element from an ally at the rear. Okay, whatever. And then, yeah, they're both the same there. But also grant 2 mana. So just getting that free 2 mana every 16 seconds, that's really good. Clearing a status element is also nice, but getting that 2 mana is really good. And then again, combining it with this, so that way you're going to be using your drag skills more often. The more often you use your drag skills, the more mana you're going to need. And so these passives work so well together. And the leadership, if you need it, is there. Great stuff. Like I said, I use the leadership on the weeks where I can't use the Mellos that I don't have, and I switch him over. The drag skill is alright, not anything too crazy. Reduces the target's defense for 15 seconds, sure, not too bad. But also increases attack for 3 allies with the highest attack. So it targets the ones with the highest DPS on your team and gives them the attack buff. So the drag skill even has its uses, which I love. Like, just makes it even better. Like, every single skill on this whole dragon is phenomenal. You can use this in Clan Dungeon. You can use Yurian in literally every single game mode. I think even in PvP, Yurian is very viable as a great backup leadership dragon, as well as a great backup support dragon. Just literally, I could throw Yurian on every single team in the game, and I would never regret it. Like, that's how, like, really solid of a support type Yurian is. So I've only got one tank that I can really, like, wholeheartedly kind of go with for PvE. PvP, we have lots of stuff that works, but in PvP, the nice thing about PvP is the silences are great. So stuff that was on that list that gave silence is less useful here because, one, the bosses you can't silence. They're useful in other game modes like Ancient Tower and Tower of Tests, but maybe aside from high-level Tower of Tests, like I'm talking like level 150 to 200, like that's the only real benefit you're going to see on those dragons, and I don't think it's like that great. But another dragon that's just kind of useful everywhere is just my go-to tank whenever I need a tank, and that's Tropheus. I sung Tropheus praises in PvP, and I'll sing them here as well. Just a great dragon. Nice little all-encompassing defense increase if you want to go the defense route on a team. Nice 35% there. The drag skill is kind of neat here. Does a target count of 4. It also decreases the attack of those dragons that it hits for 14 seconds, which is a pretty long time. So a nice little like debuff put her on. Like, he also protects your team, but also protects your team by debuffing the opponent, so that way they do less damage, and you can aim it so you can put it on the right dragons that you want to have the attack down on. so that's great. But that's not why we choose this dragon, okay? Every set duration, take damage in place of ally with very low HP for 5 seconds, right? And you can trigger this skill, it triggers every 5 seconds. So he's always taking the damage of the person that's the most hurt on your team. And the thing that I love about this dragon more than the other ones that take damage in place of, his is one, always active, always. There's no downtime where he's not taking damage for someone else, but it changes every 5 seconds, where the other ones are stagnant. It takes, like, they don't move for 15 seconds. This guy moves his every 5 seconds, so if someone new is now hurt, it'll quickly switch over and then take damage for them as well. Also, he takes less damage while he's in it. That's just really cool. Let's jump over to this last one. Become invulnerable for 10 seconds when HP is below 20%, and he recovers 5% of max health every second. So he's after 10 seconds there, he's got 50% of his health back, which is cool. You can trigger this every 60 seconds. So in Clan Dungeon, right, you can get a couple uses out of this because the matches are so long, and but also in modes like Tower of Tests and Ancient Tower, right, those you have an infinite amount of time for. If it takes you 15 minutes to beat a level, trust me, I know, I've been there. Like, I've been there. I've literally taken 13 minutes to beat a single level in Tower of Tests in the past, before they increased the level cap. And yeah, he was phenomenal because you get it every 60 seconds. This is live again. As long as he's alive, you're going to keep getting this benefit, and I think that's great. Also, when he's taking damage in place of an ally, right, and when this skill triggers, he's essentially invulnerable for himself, and the person he's taking the damage for is also technically now invulnerable. So they're both invulnerable at the same time when this trigger goes off, while he's also using this skill. And you think, wow, that is really awesome. I see why you picked this. Literally, still haven't even gotten to the part that makes me choose this dragon as like one of the most phenomenal tanks in this whole game. That's this Blessing of Dies. When an ally's HP except himself, right, because he already has this for himself, is below 25%, grant invulnerable and immune effect to one ally with very low HP, except itself, again, for 3 seconds, okay? And you can use this ability every 15 seconds. You can re-trigger this and make someone on your team invulnerable. It's only one person, but like really that's usually the most important thing. You'll have like a DPS that's really squishy, but a lot of the other people on your team might not be so squishy, so they probably aren't even that low yet. And you get hit with a big old attack, it'll save your, like, pretty much your most important piece, which is usually your attacker. It'll save them, and then they'll be invulnerable for 3 seconds. During that 3 seconds, usually his protection bubble will swap to them and then protect them. And so they're invulnerable for 3 seconds, and then now they're invulnerable because he's taking all the damage for them. And that gives your healer enough time to get enough mana to pop their heal off and bring your attacker, as an example, back up to health, right? So now they're above this 25%. This cooldown goes off at 15 seconds here after you got the skill ups, and they try to attack the attacker again. The attacker stops at 25%, and this skill will pop off again. And you can just repeatedly keep doing that, and it's so good. It's so good. There's other dragons like I like to praise Dark Gaian as like kind of one of the best tanks in the game. In PvP, I think he is the best. In PvE, not so much. But his gives a blanket invulnerable to the whole team. All 5 people become invulnerable. Like, that's pretty incredible. But you can pretty much only do that one time, because it's like 180-second cooldown or something crazy like that. Like, you get one good use out of that, and then it's done. Tropheus, though, every 15 seconds. Every 15 seconds. It's only one person, but that's usually kind of really all you need is the one person. Yeah, just so incredible. And this goes for all 3 elements here. They're all good. They're all just as equally as good, because they all can do that stuff. It's great dragons for sure. Unfortunately, that is the only one that I have on my list for tanks, for just natural 5 stars. If I might have forgotten to put this out in the beginning, but I'm not including topaz dragons, and I'm not including limited dragons. Limited dragons also have great tanks, but just flat regular 5 stars. He is, for PvE, by far my favorite, and I think he's definitely the best. But moving in, now we're going to jump over to our healers here. I've got the totems as pure, just regular 5-star healers. For PVE content, the totems are on my list instead of the Papamos. I don't have the Papamos on here. I know it's a little bit of a surprise, but I think the totems are going to be your better option. I like their kits, honestly. All of them are great. They all have the same leadership ability of evasion up, which you can build some really gnarly evasion up teams where the enemy cannot hit you. It's just so good. Really, really broken, especially in PvP. But also, their heal here is a target count of 4, and their heals are very powerful. They scale off of, I believe it's attack. Yeah, they scale off attack, so you can build some really, really like beefy heals with these guys, and I love it for sure. Also gives an attack buff to everyone they heal, so all 4 people that get targeted. I mean, even the tanks can start doing more damage with all these attack buffs. Really good stuff here. Also, every set duration has just a passive heal that's really good. Also, remove a harmful effect. That's pretty nice. And this will trigger every 13 seconds, and it's 2 enemies. We'll get. It's only 5% HP back, but you're triggering this enough that it's not too bad. So it's a heal over 5 seconds, right? And this triggers every 13 seconds. So there's 8 seconds there where you're not healing, but I think it's still really good and just as a passive heal, you know. Also, every set duration increase allies attack for 10 seconds, and this applies to the whole team. And this is also every 13 seconds, just puts out another attack buff. So your team is pretty much always stacked in doing damage, the whole team. So it's really, really cool. Just a very like beastly heal. This is also the dark type. I want to point out that the others are a little bit different. I believe, is it just the last skill? Okay, it's just the last skill. Earth does defense increase by 20%. Fire does attack up by 20%. That's really cool. Just makes his heals even more stronger. But dark, you can't pass up dark. When an ally dies, resurrect immediately and recover 30% of its HP. I think dragons that have resurrect abilities are by far the best dragons in the whole game. If you can have an awesome healer that does like really good stuff, and also has a resurrect just tacked on there in addition to all the other great stuff it does, that's a great dragon. And Dark Totem is definitely up there as like the best like PVE generic healer. Again, we're not including Topaz, we're not including Limited. I think Dark Totem is still the best in PVE. In PvP, I would give it to Papamo, just because that silence on a healer is just so awesome. So it does pretty much the same stuff as Dark Totem, but also instead of giving out so many like attack buffs, it does a nice little silence, which in PvP is so good. I do have one more though light type here, and or one more healer, and that's going to be in a light type, and that is, oh, where are you? Xenos here. I think Light Xenos is just a great dragon as well. He's basically almost copy and paste the same as Dark Totem, right? So we have the same leadership here. The heal is pretty much the same, except for it's one less target, okay? But the heal is a little bit more powerful. When you have less targets, the heals usually get stronger, which is really great. We have a resurrect, again, same thing here. Here though, it's a damage skill instead of a passive heal for the second one here, but he does have a passive heal as well, right? And this is every set duration summon a sphere that moves between allies and enemies 5 times, so it's going to bounce 10 times, right? Every time it hits your allies, it heals. Every time it hits the enemy, it does damage. This is a great passive heal. I have this on Fire Varus, and let me tell you, in Clan Dungeon, like, I don't even have to use my heal skill for like the first 30 levels, just because this passive keeps my whole team alive. I don't even have to use the drag skill heal for like literally the first 30 levels. Just what a great passive ability. It's actually very, very powerful. And on paper, it's like, that's kind of weird, but no, trust me, it's really good. And then, so basically, instead of giving another like random buff, attack buff to your team, the difference is between this and Dark Totem is you can just do damage to enemies. So kind of cool, I guess. Just more DPS, just a little bit different. Still a great dragon though, for sure. All right, our last dragons are going to be all support types. All right, supporting, we already did go over a few, though, in the beginning. We went over Yurian. Okay, we only went over one, but we went over Yurian in the beginning. These dragons are going to follow suit very, very well. Very similar kind of what they're doing, but they are a little bit different, and we'll definitely go over them. Bagma. Bagma is a great support dragon. If you go into like PvP and even in PVE and Clan Dungeon, Bagma is still very much used. If people aren't using Yurian, they're using Bagma instead. I mean, it's pretty much you're using Bagma or you're using Yurian. It's just whichever one you want to go with. And the reason they do that is for the Earth and the Light type here, when you use your drag skill, you can decrease the cooldown of allies' drag skill whose mana cost is 3 by 30% for 12 seconds. So decreasing the cooldown is great, especially on 3 mana cost dragons, because those are crazy timers. It's like 30 something seconds, 32, I forget what it is, 30 something seconds for the drag skill timer, and being able to reduce that by 30% is very, very important. Fire and water though applies to 2 mana cost attackers, still by 30 seconds or 30%. So that is it's bigger than Yurian. Okay, that's the trade-off here. Is Bagma does it for a much more powerful or a much larger time of reduction, 30% over the 15%. However, you have to use your drag skill to get this off. Now, in combination with stuff like Mello Dragon, right? Mello Dragon use the drag skill, and it reduces the mana cost. So instead of a 2 mana cost, this only becomes a 1 mana cost to use. And then also the dragon that you're reducing the timer for, the timer for, is also at 1 mana cost. So while in reality, if you use these in a nice cohesive team, you actually don't even feel it as much, because you got to use a drag skill to trigger this cooldown. It's not that big a deal, because when it's only 1 mana cost, it works out great. But if you are worried about mana that bad, he does have, they all have this passive of every 22 seconds, you have a 50% chance to gain up to 3 mana each. So each of those 3 mana has a 50% chance to proc. So you get 50 on one, 50 on the second, and 50 on the third to proc. The math works out that you almost always get 2. Sometimes you get 3, and sometimes you get 1. But the math adds up to you pretty much always get the 2, which is pretty important. However, it is every 22 seconds, whereas Yurian is even shorter than that. I think it's like every 16 seconds. That's what we said. Yurian gets the guaranteed 2 mana, okay? So less of a gamble on Yurian, which is why I personally use Yurian more, is because I like just the constant, steady, I will always get my 2 mana at the exact same time, all the time. I get, buffs on my dragon, attack buffs, that sort of thing. Whereas this dragon, you kind of give up those buffs in favor of this 30% reduction in cooldown instead of the 15%. And that's really it. They're almost the same dragon. They just kind of play a little bit differently. One's more powerful in one aspect. The other one's more powerful in the other aspect. All right, our next support type here is Ilon. Ilon is a really cool dragon. I was really, really impressed when it came out. It has this ability, right? So the drag skill isn't really anything special. It just creates a barrier for 3 of your allies. The barriers that come off of these kind of support dragons are usually pretty bad. They're not as impactful as you would hope. 77% of max HP. Even if you go straight, just full HP everything, HP runes, HP percentage on every single slot, it's still not that much. I tried it, it just wasn't worth it. You're better off just sticking with the meditation runes, a set of 4 meditations, and then a 1 HP set on the end there, and you'll do a little bit better. I just think the mana is more important. But that's not why we're here, though. So every set duration grant attack and critical rate increasing effect to an ally with highest critical rate for 10 seconds. 12 seconds on this one. yeah, and this one just targets the allies at the rear for 12 seconds, right? I don't know why that one's less time. Oh, I see, the cooldown changes. But yeah, so you get to give these nice little attack and critical rate buffs. That's really nice. Usually it's pretty much always going to be your DPS. They're going to get attack buff and a critical rate buff. And if you're curious of how much that is, a critical rate up is 30%. Okay, so you're going to give them a 30% increase on critical rate with this. Also, every set duration increase all allies' critical evasion for 10 seconds. Not that big a deal. However, after you get the skill ups, every 15 seconds you gain 1 mana. This isn't as powerful as Bagma or Yurian. For the mana gain, it's not as good, okay? For the straight buffs, though, that's where you make up for it. Is you're going to be able to crank out so much more damage. And that's because this last passive here, while you're alive, critical rate for attack-type allies is increased by 30%. And you can't double up on this. So you can't use like a dark and a water on the same team and get this to stack for 60%. However, with that other passive there, with this critical rate buff and this passive here, you're giving your dragons 60% critical rate. Combine that with like a Kathos for 20%, that's 80% critical rate just because you're running this dragon. That means that your attack dragons, you don't have to spend any worry about increasing their critical rate. You can do all attack percentage or all critical damage percentage, you know. I mean, you can go just straight damage. You don't have to worry about sacrificing anything for critical rate. I think early on, Ilon is a phenomenal dragon to put on your teams, okay? Just because early on, it's really hard to get good critical rate on dragons, and this just helps mitigate that. You don't even have to worry about it for like the first year you play this game if you're running Ilon on your teams, just because its passives alone are going to give you attack and critical rate. So you're just going to do so much damage. In addition, you've got a little bit of a mana battery there. Again, you're going to want to put meditation runes on this dragon to make up for the fact that you're not getting 2 mana. So with this and the meditation runes, you will be getting that 2 mana. Yeah, just a great passive selection of skills here. Really, really, really cool. I used Ilon in my PvP team for like a year after it came out. It was a great dragon. Again, though, the drag skill is not that great. You'll probably never use the drag skill, honestly. But again, you're not bringing it for that. You're bringing it for these great passives, and they're all good. The earth and the water one, they're all just absolutely wonderful for that. And the last dragon on this list is good old Frosty. So Frosty was kind of like the original, right? The original support that came out that just kind of started changing how they made support types in this game. And this is right before Ilon came out. I think it was like Frosty and then Loris, Loris is great for 3 mana cost dragons. It's similar to the Bagma, that the Light and Earth Bagma. It's very similar to those, Loris is. And then they came out with Ilon, right? And ultimately I ended up switching to Ilon pretty much full time. Eventually I got a limited dragon, and that's what replaced my Ilon. There was nothing else, no other support type in the game that I like more than Ilon as a regular dragon, until you get into literally, I mean, we're talking Topaz and limited dragons before you can outdo Ilon. But Frosty was the original, okay? Frosty was the original support type that they started making that just really changed the game. Again, you're going to have this same drag skill here. The drag skill, again, is not what we're here for. It's the same thing as we just went over for Ilon. Completely the same, does nothing different. The first passive here, again, very similar to Ilon, but instead of attack and critical rate, it's just 2 flat attack ones. If your team is already built, right, you already have the runes set up, or say your dragons have a passive that gives them critical rate, maybe you don't actually need critical rate buffs, so you don't actually need to run Ilon, because your critical rate's already good, right? Frosty is your go-to second then, instead of Ilon, because you get just double attack buffs instead. That's awesome, right? You're going to get, water is going to give you the attack and attack speed. So if you have dragons that scale off attack speed, you're going to want to run this one. So the water jet dragon is great to combine with the water Frosty. Same with fire, and then light comes right back around to the double attack. Next up, this passive is again very similar to Ilon. But every set duration will remove a harmful effect from an ally. Okay, that's cool. We're going to trigger this every 15 seconds. Also gain 1 mana. Again, this is only 1 mana. Ilon and Frosty and Loris, like, they were the early stages of how they wanted to do these support types. Like Yurian came out after all of them, and Yurian gave out the 2 mana, and so everyone was like, oh man, Yurian's so good just because he gets 2 mana instead of 1 mana. But again, very great stuff here. I don't like the immune effect. I'd rather just remove the harmful effect personally, because if you already have the harmful effect, then the immune isn't going to help you any. But the crazy thing on this dragon, right, which I still love this dragon, because this last passive, literally it took me getting a limited dragon that had the same passive for this last one for me to like switch into the new dragon that I use. Again, he's a limited, so I'm not even going to mention him. But while you're alive, damage caused by all attacks from attack type allies is increased by 15%. Again, this doesn't stack, so you can't use like an earth and a water together. But yeah, so they all have this increase, just a flat damage increase. You know, this gets around the fact that you can only have so many buffs, right? You can only, I think it's like 3 attack buffs. You can only have 3 attack buffs, and you can't get any more. This gets around that. So you can have 3 attack buffs and this buff going on the side to increase your damage even further. So another just flat 15%. So whatever your total damage is, right? So say you're normally swinging at 100 damage, right? And then you get 3 attack buffs. And then how much does an attack buff here do? Increases damage by attack is increased by 20%, right? So say we got 3 attack buffs on. Now we're doing 160 damage, right? And now we give this 15%, right? So that's 180 roughly, 185 damage that we're doing on top of this, where if you didn't have this passive, you would just cap out at that 160. So just absolutely wonderful. And that's not even like talking about getting critical hits, right? Critical hits is like doubling your damage. So, you know, now you're talking doing like 300 damage with a 15% on top of that. So now you're doing like 345 damage. I know like these numbers are kind of like just kind of out there, but like literally that's pretty much what they're doing here. Is you get to add on so much more damage. What a great skill. Like literally nothing like this had we ever seen before when Frosty came out. So Frosty definitely like revolutionized how supports came out, and they were just, after that we got so many cool supports for so long. I think the game is finally at a point where they're like, all right, I don't think they need any more support dragons. We need to focus elsewhere. I would say probably in the past 6 months they've switched over. Instead of supports, they moved into healers. We've actually gotten some great healers in the game. Again, most of them are all limited dragons, but still, it's nice to get some support for stuff that was lacking. So I spent 2 years chasing after Dark Totem. Never got a Dark Totem, but I finally got a dragon better than Dark Totem, so thank God they finally started making more dragons, because we desperately needed more to choose from than just the same old stuff. And now with support types after Frosty, we've got some great stuff to choose from. This list is, like I said, I hope you liked it. This was the best stuff I could like compile on one list. The video is a little bit long. What are we at now? I'm at 39 minutes recorded, so hopefully this answers most of y'all's questions, and so y'all can stop asking. The video is here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment, as well as subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoy this type of content, I try to put it out as much as possible, so definitely subscribe. Also, if you really enjoyed the content, check out my Patreon. I have a link in the description below for it. You can get access to my Discord server, as well as if you're a Dragon Village Inn fan, account takeovers where I help you out with your account. If you're a Digimon fan, I've got monthly giveaway, well, not even giveaways, I've got monthly merch that's specific to Patreon. Stuff like memory counters, custom made. This is the baby form of Vmon here. There's gonna be more in the works also, so lots of memory counters, all kinds of awesome Digimon merch. So definitely check out that tier. And if you're just all out crazy, there's other tiers if you're that dedicated. As well as check out my Teespring. I've got awesome merch there, you know, official Battle Ready Ink merch. Awesome phone cases for you Digimon fans out there. They've got them for iPhones as well as Samsungs. So they are super sweet. If you've seen the last Digimon movie, that's where these are from. I had a friend of mine custom make these so that way they fit perfectly on these phone cases. They look super good, so definitely check those out. But at the end of the day, if you can't do any of that, just like I said, like the video. That helps a ton. And subscribe. It doesn't hurt, but it helps me. So that's what's the real benefit. And as always, I'll see you next time.